John usually sits in on those too.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this Records Management Committee meeting on March 31st, 2009 to order. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. This meeting has been posted in various locations throughout the city, blah, blah. Okay. First item is the
Number 3.
approval of minutes by reference of Records Management Committee dated December 19th, 2008. Any comments? Corrections?
Guess I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, item number 4, discussion and possible action on record retention schedules for the Department of City Manager, for the departments of City Manager, City Attorney, City Auditor, Office of Business Development, Detention and Enforcement, Fire and Rescue, Finance and Business Services, Human Resources, Information Technologies, Leisure Services, Building and Safety, Public Works, and Field Operations.
We'd also like to submit into record some additional schedules that were provided to us. They are within the departments that you listed out.
Okay.
So we're gonna give
These are
those to
extra
the clerk,
divisions
and you
that-
have, yes, they're extra division, and you have copies in front of you.
Do we have any comments or questions on item number 4?
I do. This puts us within 2 divisions of having every department in the city have their records retention submitted to the clerk's office and before this board for approval. And we're gonna try to get everything to city council except for those 2 divisions on April 15th.
Who are the 2 divisions?
Office of Communication and Senior Law.
And we did talk to Sugar Vogel, and she's working on it. She's had 2 people move in and out of her office,
Right.
and she's having to change things around to get everything
Okay.
done, so.
Did they give you an indication when they'll have them complete?
Not at
No.
this time, she didn't know.
Okay,
But we'll keep following up with her.
all right.
But it's taken us a very short time to get everybody. We've been working diligently to get everybody's schedules done in conformance with the state, the new state requirements.
Fantastic. Any other comments or questions?
I actually have a question, being new to all of this. What is being done within each department to educate the employees to follow the schedule? I'm sure you've all answered that before, but can you bring me up to speed?
That's okay. Do you want to bring up to speed?
Sure, that's actually our next step. After we have these retention schedules in place, we've established them on the web, and we've established records delegates in all the departments. And we're gonna start off with a comprehensive records management training program, so that the delegates not only thoroughly understand their retention schedules, but how to apply them, how to destroy records in accordance to their schedules. We're bringing out Terry Marks, April 22nd of this month. She's the state records manager. She's gonna be speaking on retention schedules and some of the statutes that the records delegates need to be aware of. And we're also updating our records management keeping manual, and we'll be publishing that for everyone. We also created a SharePoint site, and as soon as SharePoint's rolled out to the environment, we're gonna have all of this information available to all the delegates up on our SharePoint site.
Yeah, we've been trying to, this is all tied to the citywide records management program we identified in the FSR. So we're really trying to balance 2 pieces at the same time, is getting to the departments, but also we have to have this in place or they don't know what they have to work with. So this is the foundation start.
Are the records delegates in each department going to actually assume the responsibility for the procedures and to make sure that they're carried out correctly?
Yes.
They are.
That's all gonna be in that manual in the training process, so that they understand what their involvement in is, what their process is. So even if they don't have authority to destroy the records, they know the process within their department to follow and get the approvals that they need. So if they need to go up to a manager, they'll not only know it, but the manager will know as well, when we get those in place.
Okay.
Any other
Is that
questions?
good, Brandon? Does that help?
Yep,
Okay.
that's a lot, thank you.
Well, this, I assume all this exercise we're doing is to make us in compliance with NRS, or is this just an efficiency that we're
It's
doing?
twofold. It's the efficiency to get the city where it needs to be to manage its records, so we can move forward with not only paper record management, but the big key is the electronic document and record management. But it is also to be in compliance, which we have not been for many years. So it's actually two pieces to this entire process.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? Do I have a motion to
So moved.
have a second?
Second?
Have a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 4 passes. Item number 5, discussion and possible action regarding record operation procedures for development of records retention, schedules, public records requests, and destruction of public records.
Back in December, part of the Enterprise Records Management Initiative, we talked about developing policies and procedures along with our retention schedules to ensure compliance. And some of those policies and procedures, we adopted 2 records directives in December and 2 forms. And then along with those, we needed to actually develop some procedures. So there's 3 procedures here in front of you for consideration. The first one, discuss the procedures of retention schedules, which everybody's pretty familiar with. It's a commitment that discusses ERM will be working with the departments to not only develop but to revise these as needed, and that the retention schedules then go before Records Management Committee for adoption. After they're adopted by the Records Management Committee, they go before council, and then after that, we send it up to the state archivist. So that's what the records operating procedure for retention schedules discusses. The next one is on public records requests. And this just solidifies the process and how we process our public records across the board. We've identified, previously John Redland had talked about balancing tests, so we have some definitions in there for people and some general rules that should be followed, such as the utilization of the public records request form. If the department doesn't have one already developed, we've created this one that we talked about is somewhat generic, so it can be utilized by all departments. We've discussed some rules, one of it being that if the request involves the media, that as a courtesy, the Office of Communication should be contacted. But the custodian of record, that department really needs to handle the records request. And when it's a multi-departmental records request, the city clerk's office will be facilitating that records request. So that's outlined in the second operating procedure. We've also discussed what an extraordinary public records request is, and we've also stated that there is a fee schedule in place, and I know that that's something that they're looking into revising in the near future.
Are you talking about increasing the fees when you talk about revising?
I think they're looking across the board.
Yeah, that's part of the FSR.
The fee structure.
Yeah,
Right.
the fee structure for the city, and that's gonna be
The fee
kind of
study.
reviewed in that process to see if we wanna change that structure.
And then the third operating procedure is destruction of public records. One of the unique situations is that now that we're gonna have adopted retention schedules, we needed to lay out operating procedures on how the departments are to actually utilize our certificate of destruction form and how they can go about destroying or purging those records. So we've laid out that operating procedure in the third document.
And one of the reasons that this particular procedure is so important is in our assessment, we've been working with some different departments. We're finding out that some of the divisions are doing their destruction process, but instead of in accordance with how you destroy the documents, they're simply throwing it in the trash, which you can't do. So this is an important piece to get in place so we can start getting it out there. So if departments are doing it, they do it in the proper fashion to get rid of their paper.
Right?
That was an eye-opener for us.
Yeah.
Any questions on those?
Real quick, on the public records request, was that forwarded to David Riggleman for his review? And was he invited to the meeting today?
Yes, he was invited.
Did he get any feedback from
No.
his office?
And you just have a copy.
All right, so I guess the direction will be make sure that he has a copy of it and
Yeah.
he's comfortable with it, and we'll go with that.
Should we give him a chance to review it before anything more formal is done with it?
That's up to
Just,
you all.
just so we have on the record that the Office of Communications is agreeable to it.
When's our next meeting?
We don't have a set date at this time. We can move that particular form forward if you want. I mean, our people, we've been trying to get them to meetings and we don't seem to.
You can move to approve it, and if they don't like it,
Yes.
they can ask for a line item on the next meeting to rescind it.
Okay.
Okay, we can do
Mhm.
that.
Better idea.
We'll
Thank
do,
you.
yeah, we'll move forward
Thank
with
you, Brad.
Brad's suggestion, that's a great one.
I would just hate to see it approved and,
Okay.
We'll make sure he gets a copy and see if he has any issues with it, 'cause that's been one of our biggest problems is the media tends to go right to David with
Yes.
requests, and we're missing the
Mhm.
5-day
Mhm.
compliance with state
Yeah.
law. We want to avoid that at all costs.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, and I'm not finding it, and it might be because I'm just not reading through all of this quick enough.
Yeah.
Initially, we had talked about, or subsequently, after a lot of discussion, we had talked about all records requests come through the clerk, regardless. Not just the ones that have been delineated here.
Multi-department.
Not the multi.
Yeah, multi-department. And the reason for that is, one, the urgency, the implication, the department, the custodian, and determining the custodian or custodians. Because I could get a records request and not realize that it's multi-department. I can get a records request and not realize the implication from the city attorney's office. Having a central location that's not only logged, it starts the clock for the 5 days, or at least that's managed, and there's some sort of central administration so that there's consistency in how we handle the records and we deliver them, as well as charge. That would be my recommendation, and it doesn't seem to be here.
I don't think we ever had enough discussion on that one.
Is it something that would be
I
feasible
guess we
for
could
the city
open
clerk?
Yeah, we could do it, if that's what
Greg?
becomes the consensus of the board, if it makes it easier for all departments to, if you get a records request, you send it to us, then there's
Yeah.
no question.
Let me ask you,
Now, muni court's a bit different, and
Well, we-
uni may
Yeah.
be different.
We
Because-
fulfill research requests all day long,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure that's something, we also
And-
don't fall under the same guidelines that
Exactly.
the city does, so.
and would we be going into the same thing if it's all they're going like to David now, instead of going to David, they're all going to you? Would we fall under the same timeline that we're doing now?
No, I don't think so. I think when it goes to David, there's a different, sometimes a different application and a different purpose. It's a media request. We go through e-discovery on a consistent basis. I think anything e-discovery should be coming through the clerk's office, and that may not be multiple departments.
If they just single department issues, would go everything through the clerk?
I'm thinking that everything should go through the clerk with certain exceptions. There are certain things that just wouldn't make any practical sense. And by the way, they monitor, manage, and it's a single-purpose request when it goes through the court. Multiple court records, but it's still, they're looking for a court record. I think those exceptions could be managed. But it has been the problem here since I've been here in records administration, is the constant request for this kind of information.
Brad, what's your,
I was gonna just make a comment if I could. There's not very many faces around the table that, were here when this started, but this is a very monumental, it's almost an evolution. And, it's through a lot of hard work by a lot of people that we've gotten to this point. I'm very, very happy to see us at this point. I mean, it was not an easy task to get here. A lot of things had to be done, procedures had to be followed, and it's taken us a long time to get here. But I for one am very glad to see this ready to be acted upon by this committee.
okay? Yes, sir.
In regards to Joe's comment about it, I think one thing we want to look at is how do the records requests trend now? Is the greater percentage that tend to go directly to departments, department directors, or do they tend to go? And the real question is, when does the clock start ticking? Because if the current trend is to hit a department, and that's when the clock starts ticking, and then they are redirected to the clerk, and then the clerk redirects, or the clerk then facilitates it to the department, I can foresee a delay there. If we want to go that route, and I don't see why we wouldn't, we also want to probably work on a marketing campaign to let
All records requests from
everyone
the
know.
city.
Records requests should be.
Think about the nature of the record, it's changing. You're not going for paper anymore, and eventually it's going to be less and less of that paper. And the truth is I can't tell you who the custodian is, because in some cases, when somebody asks for a record, I'm the only one that's got it. I didn't originate it, I'm not really responsible for it, it's accessed by every other department, or some other department has responsibility for it, but I'm the one that has to do the mining,
Right, your
programming,
facilitation.
and facilitation.
burden is-
So that records request, even though, so you'd have a department that owns it and a facility to extract it from. And that's a coordination. If I get the request, I don't really know what I'm being asked for. So if you think about where the world it was and where it's going, I mean, I remember sitting in this committee 5 years ago, and there wasn't any consideration of electronic records. Now, the main consideration is the electronic record, because it's the better alternative. So my belief is that you need a central clearinghouse for records administration, with certain exceptions. I agree with you about the court, and there are several others.
Do most of the records requests come in now electronically? Is that what you're,
Almost every request that comes through this city will come out of my facilities, in one way or another, if it has anything, if there's anything like electronic.
Emails.
I think that's why.
okay, I see what you're
That
saying.
increases the need for that marketing, because as everything gravitates toward the electronic, a lot of people are just gonna assume it's electronic, it's IT, we go hit IT after those records. So,
And I wouldn't even have a clue which is the proper record.
Is if we're moving to the clerk's office managing all of the electronic records for the city through a management system, what Joe's talking about would be ideal, because if we're gonna house it all in one repository and have the ability to store the paper at the records facility and have the electronic search capability, all the request comes through, we have the ability to find it, regardless of whose department owns it. John's guidance on this one has always been, to answer Scott's question, is the clock starts ticking when the request gets to the owner of the document. So even if the clerk's office took the request, if we don't own the document, say Carla does, and we have to send it to Muni Court, the clock starts ticking when she takes receipt of the request, not when the clerk's office does. Unless the documents are in our possession, then it starts with us. And I think that's been delineated to departments, so they're pretty well up to speed on that part of it. Thank you, Ed. That was
So the question is this something that we can work towards? Yeah, could we do it today? No. We don't have the structure in place, the technology in place, or any of the processes in place to do centrally delivered records requests today. But with the implementation of electronic records, we can definitely, in a workflow.
Put the clearinghouse right now?
Actually, I don't see any reason why the physical request couldn't come through a single place, and then obviously get distributed according to what mechanisms are necessary to fulfill that request.
Which is what we do now for the multiple departments.
And what we're talking about is electronic repositories, some sort of artificial intelligence for handling the email, the purge and the life cycle mechanisms and all of the rest of it. That's still evolving, but we could still use what we're currently using to get to where we need to facilitate those requests.
So on that, if we're using city clerks as a person that all record requests goes for, and I agree, we do have to do a media blitz on this, and David, notifying all of his people, all of the newspapers and media, that all record requests need to go to the city clerk. I think that's reasonable.
And we outlined the departments that have they don't have the ability to do it that way, which is obviously Muni Court and D&E, because those records are
Criminal
such that
justice.
we don't have access to it. Now, we do a lot for D&E because we've taken on
Yeah, and take
doing a lot of
because
the
a
records.
lot of ours are gonna go electronic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, to some extent, we would be able to handle some of your records requests, but not all of them
But
right
would all
now.
of them come through the clerk's office and then get filtered down to us? That's how it would work?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we have the record, we would respond. If we
And then
don't,
if
we
not,
would
you'd
send it
send it to
directly
us
to
and then
you.
we would do it.
Correct.
And then would you, if you did respond to a record that you had custody of, would you then send the notification to D&E to let them know?
Correct.
So do you have that process in place?
No, that's what if that's what the board decides and we wanna go in that direction, we would have to put some forms or a notification process in place in order to do that.
And
We
then
would
do you
be-
have the staffing in place
No.
currently to be able to,
Not today, but
Yeah.
we have some additional staff who we might be able to, Luann might be able to put a program in place.
What
And
kind-
maybe we can bring,
what kind of time,
I know, like that's why.
what kind of timeframe are you talking about, Joe?
I don't know, one of the challenges we're faced with is the DSC implementation. We have 14
Right.
months to come on board with that, and our estimates are it's gonna take 11 FTEs to get it accomplished.
Wow.
And we don't have 11 FTEs in a division of 14 that are still to provide services other than just the DSC's
Mhm.
move. So to do this right and to make sure that we're not dropping the ball, we need to have somebody dedicated to this. It can't be just one person.
How about if we put a draft together on some ways to handle this, and we'll get another records meeting, say in a month, 6 weeks, something like that, and bring something back that we might think can work between all the departments, and see what y'all think.
Let me recommend this, because I understand the constraint, I understand that we're moving to different facilities.
We're at
I
warp
understand
speed
that
right
there's
now.
a lot of 3x3 files that have to be dealt with, both electronically or purged in that. And this is a direct line, because for this to be effective, particularly since lots of the requests, and probably more than half of the requests are going to be for electronic records, then our new records management mechanisms need to be put in place. And that's a revision from where the heck we are today. And there's a lot more tools and search and capabilities go along with that. So if we do this on parallel tracks, then by the time you're ready, the systems that enable that will probably be in place. They make better sense?
So what kind of a time frame are you talking about?
We're probably talking anywhere from 9 to 18 months
From now?
from now.
Okay. So then in the interim, you're going to adopt a different set of procedures?
We adopt what's currently here, and then we review this in 18.
9 to 18 months?
Well, I'd say we're gonna be reviewing it along the way,
Yeah.
until we get to the end at 18
Yeah.
months and have a final product.
But you could adopt these,
Yeah,
if
we
that's
could
what
bring
you're
pieces
saying.
back as we
Mhm.
move through and see
Mhm.
how we wanna adjust them for all departments. Does that make a better process instead of jumping in with both feet?
I think it does.
So this would carry us through until we can start working on some change.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. What about?
Plus, it gives you a little bit of a cushion as far as time.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll start working with Joe and see how we wanna make changes on
Mhm.
his side of it. Okay.
And she's still shorter, so she hasn't been able to kick me under the table yet.
I'll stretch over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would want to acknowledge too, that one of our goals too is to provide, with this records management system, is to provide a public-facing part of that enables self-service for the citizens too, which will reduce eventually, when it's implemented, the burden on city clerk's department.
All right, so item 5, we have a motion to adopt what we currently have, but review it continuously until a point where we have
Process improvements.
process improvements until we get to that point.
Okay,
Is that the correct motion?
sounds good to me.
Second?
Second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, sounds like we passed number 5. Item number 6, citizen participation. See none, I guess, meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.